Dear students, welcome to the lecture on Critique of Modernism. There are three main objectives of this lecture. One is to revise and understand modernism's fundamental principles and characteristics. The second objective is to encourage you to critically analyze the potential shortcomings of modernist approaches and also to look for alternative perspectives. And the third is to highlight how postmodernism emerged as a critique of certain aspects of modernism. So, overall this lecture intends to foster critical thinking, encourage all students to engage in thoughtful discussions and help students to appreciate the complexities of artistic and intellectual movements. So, dear students, till now we have learnt that modernism is an artistic, literary and cultural movement, but over the years this movement has also faced much criticism from various scholars, and there have been multiple reasons for criticism of modernism in various fields, including art, literature and philosophy. For example, one primary criticism revolves around the perceived detachment from tradition and rejecting established norms. Critics argue that modernism's emphasis on innovation and individualism can lead to a disregard for cultural heritage and a loss of continuity with the past. Another critique concerns the potential for elitism and complexity. Some scholars argue that often abstract and avant-garde nature of modernist works can exclude a broader audience, making them accessible only to a select group of intellectuals or artists. Additionally, criticism has been directed at the perceived nihilism and disillusionment that can arise from certain modernist viewpoints. The questioning of traditional values and the search for new forms of expression can sometimes lead to a sense of disorientation and existential uncertainty. Critics also point out that the rejection of established norms in modernism can sometimes lead to a lack of coherence and meaning in artistic or philosophical works. The absence of clear structures and the embrace of ambiguity can make it challenging for audiences to interpret and engage with these works. Some critics argue that modernism's emphasis on subjectivity and individual interpretation can undermine shared cultural experiences and societal cohesion. They contend that an excessive focus on personal perspectives may hinder the ability to communicate broader social and ethical messages. However, these criticisms may not be universally applicable to all forms of modernism. Still, we can draw a list of some critics like traditionalist and conservative critics, as we already discussed. Then there are nationalist and cultural critics who criticized modernism for its international and cosmopolitan nature. They believed that modernist works disregarded national and cultural identities in favor of a more global perspective. Then there are some religious authorities that criticized modernism for its perceived secularism and rejection of religious themes. They saw modernist art and literature as promoting a worldview that clashed with religious or spiritual teachings. Then there are critics of complexity who prefer more straightforward and accessible art and literature. They found modernism to be overly complex and difficult to understand. Modernist works are often characterized by experimentation with form, language and narrative structure. And there are mass media critics arguing that modernism has been elitist and disconnected from the concerns of ordinary people by focusing on a niche audience. Also in the early to mid 20th century, fascist and totalitarian regimes in some countries such as Nazi Germany and Stalinist Soviet Union condemned modernist art as degenerate or decadent. They believed that modernism did not align with their ideological agendas and sought to suppress it. Interestingly, some artists and writers who were part of the modernist movement themselves had certain reservations and expressed criticism about certain aspects of modernism. For instance, writer T.S. Eliot, despite being associated with modernism, expressed concerns about its potential excesses and fragmentation. In his essay The Metaphysical Poets, which was published in 1921, and his poem The Waste Land, which was published the next year in 1922, he expressed concerns about the fragmentation and disunity evident in modernist works. He saw the fragmentation as a reflection of the fractured state of the modern world, leading to a lack of coherence in both literature and society. The criticism of modernism has a long history, and many thinkers and scholars have contributed to challenging and questioning the ideas and principles associated with modernist thought. We may refer to a list of scholars like Rousseau, Kierkegaard, Marx, Nietzsche, Weber, Spengler, Heidegger and Arendt, and refer to them as pioneers of the criticism of modernism in scholarly traditions. Dear students, let us discuss the pioneers of the criticism of modernism. Firstly, the French philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau criticized the emerging modern society for its corruption of natural human goodness. He critiqued modernism's emphasis on reason and progress, seeing it as alienating humans from their natural state. He believed that material advancement led to inequality and moral decay. So, he proposed a return to a simpler, more egalitarian form of nature and communal living aligned with human nature. Secondly, the Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard criticized the abstract and impersonal nature of modernism's focus on reason and universal truths. He emphasized the importance of individual subjectivity and the need for personal existential choices. Thirdly, German scholars are leading among the lot who critiqued modernism. Karl Marx critiqued modernity's capitalist system, which he saw as perpetuating inequality and exploitation. So, he argued for a radical restructuring of society to achieve a classless communist society. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche criticized the Enlightenment's rationalism and optimism, believing it led to a shallow and life-denying worldview. He questioned the idea of objective truth, championed individuality, and warned against the dangers of mass conformity. The sociologist Max Weber criticized modernism's overly rational and bureaucratic nature, which he called the iron cage of rationality. He discussed the disenchantment of the world as a modernization advanced, leading to the loss of traditional values and spiritual meaning. Oswald Spengler, a philosopher and historian, criticized the linear view of history in modernism and proposed a cyclical model of civilization's rise and fall. He argued that the West was in decline due to the exhaustion of its cultural energies. Martin Heidegger, an existentialist philosopher, criticized the human-centric nature of modernism, arguing that it led to the neglect of our relationship with nature and the essence of being. He questioned the technological mindset and its impact on human existence. The German-American political theorist Hannah Arendt criticized the loss of public engagement and the rise of a bureaucratic, alienating society in modernity. She emphasized the importance of active political participation and the preservation of human plurality. These pioneers of criticism have significantly influenced subsequent generations of thinkers and continue to be relevant in contemporary debates about modernism and its implications for society, politics, and culture. Their critiques have challenged and enriched the understanding of modernist thought, paving the way for ongoing discussions and the evolution of political philosophy. Some of the main criticisms of modernist political philosophy include reductionism and oversimplification of complex social and political issues by reducing them to abstract principles or universal theories. This reductionist approach may need to pay more attention to the nuances and particularities of different contexts, leading to inadequate solutions for real world problems. Then there is a problem of individualism and atomization, since modernist political philosophy often strongly emphasizes individual rights and freedoms, sometimes at the expense of communal values and social cohesion. Critics argue that this atomization of society can break social bonds and diminish the sense of collective responsibility. Also, there is a neglect of tradition and history because modernist political philosophy often needs to pay more attention to the importance of tradition and historical context. Critics argue that ignoring the accumulated wisdom and practices of the past can lead to impractical or even harmful policy decisions. Overemphasis on rationality is another characteristic of modernism that faces much criticism. It prioritizes rationality and instrumental reason, assuming that human beings always act in their self-interest and make rational choices. However, this perspective may overlook the influence of emotions, culture, and social factors on human behavior. Some critics argue that modernist political philosophy has no regard for nature and environment. However, it does not universally disregard nature and the environment, but it has been critiqued for often focusing more on human-centric concerns. The political theories, especially those arising during the Enlightenment and after, tend to emphasize human rights, individualism, and the governance structure, and have contributed to the exploitation of nature and natural resources, leading to environmental degradation and ecological crisis. Then there is the possibility of biased modernist political philosophies, since most of them have emerged from a Western perspective, which may only partially encompass the diversity of worldviews and cultural contexts. Critics argue that this can lead to a lack of inclusivity and understanding of non-Western political traditions. Critics also say that modernist political philosophy needs to adequately address economic inequality and social justice issues, focusing instead on formal rights and procedural fairness. There are contentions that it promotes technocratic governance, where experts and bureaucrats hold significant decision making power, potentially undermining democratic principles. There are apprehensions that modernist political philosophy may need to account for power dynamics. It may need to address power structures and how they shape political processes sufficiently. Critics argue that this oversight can perpetuate existing power imbalances and inhibit the pursuit of genuine equality. Dear students, let us talk about the critique of modernism in contemporary social and political thought. In contemporary social and political thought, the criticism of modernism remains relevant, and scholars continue to question and challenge various aspects of modernist principles and practices. Alain Touraine, a prominent French sociologist, has offered his Critique of Modernity. It was published in 1995 through his influential works on sociological theory and social movements. While his views may not represent all contemporary criticisms of modernism, his contributions have been significant in the field of social sciences. Some critical elements of Touraine's critique of modernism include the critique of technocratic rationality, rejection of determinism, the primacy of social movements, emphasis on identity and culture, critique of globalization, the idea of historicity, subjectivity and subjective rationality. He criticizes the dominance of technocratic rationality in modern societies. Touraine argues that the pursuit of efficiency and instrumental rationality has led to a dehumanizing and alienating social environment, where individuals become passive objects of manipulation by bureaucratic systems. It is important to note that Touraine's ideas are part of a broader intellectual tradition within sociology and social theory, and he has engaged in debates about modernity, postmodernity and social change. In short, like other critiques of modernism, Touraine's work encourages a more nuanced understanding of contemporary society, accounting for social agency, cultural diversity and historical context in analyzing social and political phenomena. Talking about the critique of technocratic rationality, Touraine criticizes the dominance of technocratic rationality in modern societies. He argues that the pursuit of efficiency and instrumental rationality has led to a dehumanizing and alienating social environment, where individuals become passive objects of manipulation by bureaucratic systems. Then, with regard to the rejection of determinism, unlike some modernist perspectives that emphasize deterministic processes and universal laws governing social change, Touraine stresses the importance of human agency and historical contingency in shaping social outcomes. He highlights the role of social actors and their capacity to contest and shape social structures. The primacy of social movements. Then Touraine's work has extensively focused on the role of social movements in challenging existing power structures and driving social change. He believes that social movements represent the driving force behind historical transformations and play a crucial role in asserting human rights and social justice. There is an emphasis on identity and culture. Touraine recognizes the significance of identity and culture in shaping social relations and political action. He emphasizes the need to respect and value cultural diversity and argues against attempts to impose a singular homogenizing vision of modernity. Then If we look at the critique of globalization, Torin has also critiqued certain aspects of globalization, particularly its tendency to undermine local cultures and marginalize vulnerable populations. He calls for a more inclusive form of globalization that respects cultural differences and promotes dialogue between civilizations. The idea of historicity is another such criticism. Torin introduces the concept of historicity to emphasize the ongoing process of constructing social reality and meaning. He argues that modern societies are characterized by constant change and transformation, making it necessary to acknowledge the dynamic nature of social phenomena. With regard to subjectivity and subjective rationality, Torin highlights their importance in human action in contrast to an exclusively objective instrumental rationality. He explores how individuals' values, beliefs and emotions influence their behavior and social engagement. It is important to note that Torin's ideas are part of a broader intellectual tradition within sociology and social theory, and he has engaged in debates about modernity, postmodernity and social change. Like other critiques of modernism, Torin's work encourages a more nuanced understanding of contemporary society, accounting for social agency, cultural diversity and historical context in the analysis of political and social phenomena. In general, the critique of modernism comes from various ideological setups, especially in contemporary scholarly traditions. We may refer to a few post-colonial thinkers who argue that modernism, as it emerged from Western colonial powers, often perpetuated Eurocentric biases and cultural imperialism. They highlight how modernist ideas and practices have been used to justify and impose Western values and institutions on non-Western societies, leading to cultural erasure and subjugation. Feminist scholars criticize modernism for its historical marginalization and exclusion of women's voices and experiences. They argue that modernist political thought has often reinforced patriarchal structures and gender inequalities, neglecting the unique challenges faced by women in society. The environmental critics point out that modernism's emphasis on progress, economic growth and industrialization has contributed to environmental degradation and climate change. They argue that a more sustainable and ecologically sensitive approach is needed to address pressing environmental issues. The communitarian thinkers criticize modernism's individualistic tendencies and its neglect of community and social bonds. They advocate for a more balanced approach that values both individual rights and communal responsibilities. Critics of modernism in the context of globalization argue that its promotion of free market capitalism and unrestricted economic globalization has led to widening income disparities, labor exploitation, and the erosion of local cultures and identities. Scholars influenced by the recognition theory argue that modernism's emphasis on formal rights and universal principles may overlook the importance of recognizing and respecting diverse identities, cultures, and histories. Contemporary critical theorists argue that modernist political thought has often obscured and perpetuated underlying power structures and systematic inequalities. They advocate critically examining dominant narratives and ideologies to challenge oppressive social arrangements. And postmodernist thinkers challenge modernism's grand narratives and meta-narratives, emphasizing the diversity of perspectives and the subjectivity of truth. They criticize modernist claims to objective knowledge, and propose alternative ways of understanding politics and society. These contemporary criticisms highlight the ongoing relevance of questioning and refining political thought in light of new challenges and perspectives. As political landscapes continue to evolve, engaging with these critiques is essential for fostering more inclusive, just, and sustainable political philosophies and practices. Let us talk a little more about the postmodernist critique of modernism, because it is unique in its approach. Postmodernism emerged in the mid 20th century as a distinct movement in response to the principles and assumptions of modernism. It challenges the modernist notion of objective truth, linear progress, and universal narratives. Postmodernism's focus on subjectivity, plurality of perspectives, and deconstruction sets it apart from earlier philosophical and artistic paradigms. Dear students, now I will explain the postmodernist critique of modernism. While modernism celebrates concepts like progress, reason, universality, and a belief in the grand narratives of history, postmodernism challenges all these ideas and questions their validity. Some common criticisms that postmodernists level against modernism include, first of all, the rejection of universal truth. Postmodernists argue that the modernist emphasis on universal truths and objective knowledge is overly simplistic and fails to account for the diversity of human experiences and perspectives. Second could be the suspicion of grand narratives. Postmodernists critique modernism's reliance on overarching narratives that claim to explain the course of history or human development. They suggest that these narratives often neglect marginalized voices and serve to reinforce power structures. Thirdly, postmodernists are also critical of the modernist belief in reason and progress as the primary drivers of human advancement. They point out that the potential for these ideas to be manipulated and abused, leading to oppressive systems. Postmodern thought also challenges the binary oppositions that are often found in modernist thinking, such as right wrong, good bad, or male female. Postmodernists emphasize the complexity and fluidity of these concepts. Postmodernists deconstruct language and meaning, highlighting how language can be used to manipulate and control, and how meaning is often unstable and context dependent. Postmodernism highlights the fragmented and diverse nature of reality, focusing on the importance of local contexts and individual experiences rather than trying to establish universal principles. It is important to note that these criticisms are unique across all postmodern thinkers. There is a wide range of perspectives within both modernism and postmodernism. Additionally, while postmodernism criticizes certain aspects of modernism, it builds on and reacts to modernist ideas in complex ways. Dear students, to conclude this lecture, we can say that the critique of modernism in modern political thought and philosophy highlights several concerns about its impact on society and governance. Critics argue that an excessive focus on individualism and autonomy can potentially undermine social cohesion and shared values. The rejection of tradition and established norms, while encouraging innovation, may also lead to a loss of cultural continuity and a sense of rootlessness. Moreover, the emphasis on reason and rationality might need to pay more attention to the importance of emotions, intuition, and cultural diversity in shaping political decisions. the abstract and complex nature of some modernist ideas can make them inaccessible to a broader audience, hindering democratic dialogue and participation. Additionally, the rejection of overarching meta-narratives can lead to moral relativism and a lack of ethical guidance in public discourse. While modernism has contributed valuable insights to political thought, its critics emphasize the need for a balanced approach that integrates the strengths of modernist ideas with the wisdom of tradition and the complexities of human experience. Moreover, defenders of modernism argue that it has also brought about positive advancements such as promoting democracy, human rights, and scientific progress. As with any philosophical framework, it is crucial to engage in critical analysis and open discourse to refine and improve political thought continuously. So, dear students, I hope you gained some knowledge on critique of modernism. We will meet again with another lecture. Thank you.